MuntUit is an organization established 7 years ago together with Hugo, who's now in retirement but is still very active and is my personal hero in this team. Thank you, Hugo, for being here all the time. And we are established to support, develop, promote complementary currencies or local currencies, community currencies in the northern part of Belgium. Recently, I came across this module. It's not my module. It's the module of the ULEX project from Barcelona. But I think it's a helpful project to position yourself as an organization within a whole ecosystem or within a social movement, let's say a social movement of complementary currencies. So I think the position we take with MuntUit is like we are working very much on, or we have been working the last 7 years, very much on experimenting. So the prefigurative role in this ecosystem, and also on cooperation. All the other roles or methods are also important for this movement. But this is where we are. And so I will take you through 7 years of practice. We've been playing around with a lot of experiments. We're playing in the mud. We've learned from that. If this was a sales pitch, I probably would not show all the slides that I'm going to show you right now. But I think it's important for us in occasions like these that we just share an honest story, and in order that we can fail forward as a movement. So I don't have the time to delve into each project, so I'm just gonna tell for each project one lesson we learned from it. Klavers is a project we did a couple of years ago, which was based on a guaranteed income and demurrage as a model. We went through the streets of Lichtervelde, which is a really small village in Flanders, with a lot of people that never heard about local currency. We went down the streets and I think Hugo did it actually, rang on the doorbells of addresses that came out of a lottery. These people received local currency as a guaranteed income for a couple of months. They were very skeptical in the beginning, but also shopkeepers were very skeptical. And so the lesson we learned from this Klavers project is that of course, there was the short time period of the whole project. We had to take that into account, but still, in the future, we really need to think about how we can design the mental process stakeholders have to go through. And actually, I was really inspired by some presentations today and yesterday that also said the same thing. In fact, it's a language, it's about communication, but it's also about developing these small steps for this mind shift to occur and not start to tell the whole story at the beginning. We had a survey with this project, which was really interesting. In the beginning, people were very skeptical, never heard about basic income or guaranteed income. People who participated, both those that were randomly selected and those who just voluntarily came into the project, their perception of basic income changed in a positive way. Another project is Talento. Talento was set up in the middle of the asylum crisis by the end of the 2017, I think, or 2018. And it was financed by the federal government of Belgium because they were really looking for different methodologies to look how they could integrate people. And we came with a methodology like local currency, where we stressed that if we use a local currency, we actually, with every transaction, we should communicate that people in this transaction are equal and are both contributing to the community. It was an interesting project because we were really able to actively work with several newcomers, and they were really eager actually to show that they were interested in doing meaningful things for the community that is hosting them. But we realized after a couple of years the funding was over, and that's mainly because in the heads of the local administrators and in the heads of the federal government who supported the project was a project. It was not a tool. It was not a tool used by administrators, people within organizations to do the work that they already had to do in a better way. And I think that's really important now if we will start again with such projects, that we always explain it's actually a tool that you have to integrate structurally into your workings. But it's a really good tool. I wanted to stress that. I already said that, in fact, that we really saw that. One little anecdote maybe, we saw with the speaking tables. Normally you would say someone goes to a speaking table in the library, and the one who is giving the language skills to the other person would receive a reward. We said, no, we both reward the one who is teaching and the one who is following the course. So that way we could shift the idea that it was like a one-way transaction. Another project is Buurttijd. Actually, it's a project that already runs for over 10 years. It's in the neighborhood of Belgium in Antwerp. It's one of the neighborhoods over there. I think the most important thing here is that we've seen that people who already did voluntary work start feeling more valued and also start valuing more voluntary work. It's like organized by a neighborhood house, and they as their tool. They really use it as their tool to make what they already did before better, to organize this community building better. Really nice story. It's not scientifically representative, I think, but a really nice story. One anecdote that really triggers two people into the project is that at a certain point, people who attended the program said, I don't need this Buurttijd. I don't need it. And the organizers stressed, well, you know what? We're going to give it to you anyways. But no, I don't need it. Okay, donate it. And so they started with a gift pot, and they thought this was for the so-called middle-class people. But after a while, they realized that also the so-called poor people in the neighborhood contributed to this gift pot. And they started asking, wondering, how does that come? And one of them said, this is the first time I can give something back to the community. I can actually donate. I cannot donate in euros, but I can donate in Buurttijd. Sensin is one of our bigger projects, I would say. It's a collaboration with the city of Sint-Niklaas. And it's inspired by the Santa Colomna model, where the city of Sint-Niklaas decided to actually, instead of handing out euros for subsidies and so on, they say, well, let's do that in a local currency so that at least we realize two policy goals already from the start. So we give subsidies for green roofs. Well, let's do that in Sensin, not in euros, so that at least these subsidies go back to the local shopkeepers or the local economy. It's also based on a cashback system. So what this means that in order to convince shopkeepers to, if they were not yet convinced by the simple fact that the government is actually injecting euros into the project, we said this can be an alternative for all the commercial systems that you already have, like Join is a famous loyalty program and so on. And so we programmed this cashback also as a way to let them not to be the endpoint in itself, but also being a starting point within the currency flows. It's good to have a municipality on board, I think. We see that it really helps to make things more structural and so on. And in the beginning, they promised us to inject 240,000 euros a year into the project, like in circulation through subsidies and so on. We're not there yet, because if you involve a municipality, you also make it a bit more political, and you come in the domain of party politics. And so while one alderman agreed to support the system, the others said in the beginning, yeah, sure. They never thought it would have been realized. Once it's realized, they say, we don't want to support it because it's actually his project and so on. So that's the annoying thing, and that's when you come. That's what happens when you play in the mud, right? When you're into practice. Torcu, probably most of you know Torcu because Bernard Littard was really a fond ambassador of it. Some people think that Torcu is dead. I would say it's sleeping right now. But really interesting, if we look at the figures of Torcu, is that we really see a relation in between active matchmaking, that is someone in the field that is connecting needs and capabilities within the neighborhood. Once that happens, we see an increase to 9,000 hours of voluntary work. Once people step out, somebody is ill, or some organization takes over from another organization in this matchmaking activity, we see that it drops. And now it really dropped because the city of Ghent took it over and they didn't realize they had to actively maintain it. So we hope after the local elections in October, we might change this. Mechelse Koekook is one of my favorites, even though it's such a small project. It's just about one neighborhood house and the organizations within the street of the neighborhood house. For me, it shows that it's an effective tool to combine needs and capabilities within a community, even on a square kilometer. Just initiating the whole process, doing the workshops, letting them talk with each other, we realized, or they realized, that one organization had plenty of volunteers sitting within the organization waiting, and with sitting I really mean physically sitting and waiting, like long-term unemployed people and so on. They were there for the social activity, but they are actually also waiting for meaningful activities they could do within the community or within the economy. The organization next doors was a well-funded organization with a lot of capabilities, a lot of infrastructure, but a lack of volunteers. Imagine, they didn't know, they lived next doors, they didn't know from each other's needs and capabilities, and with this project we matched them. Limbu was our most ambitious project. Limbu is dead, unfortunately. It started in 2006 with Hugo and the intermunicipal company, waste company, that started a gamification project, I would say, on reducing trash and so on, and climate action. It became successful. 9 municipalities were collaborating on this. More than 4,000 participants were in the scheme. So they thought, or we thought together, what if we make it a scheme for the whole province of Limburg? And what, instead of 9 municipalities, we convinced like 38 municipalities to join the program. And what if we also, instead of just keeping it between public administrations and the waste company, what if we also invite shopkeepers, local producers, and so on? We actually established, together with the local team, a lot of enthusiasm around this project, and it was also picked up by the national media. Unfortunately, that had 2 effects. One, we became enthusiastic. Secondly, the National Bank became aware of our project and said, oh, this Limburg euro, we're not going to allow that. And so we got into discussions for over 2 years with the bank, with the National Bank, and that meant, in fact, that the political momentum was over. So it's really important to be aware. What we didn't do during this process, we really delved into the technical issues of the whole process, saying, well, according to our lawyers, it's possible. According to you, not, and so on. So we were also trying to convince banks and so on to save the project. But we were not aware that the whole political system in Limburg was changing. And the deputy of the province, who was really fond of the project, didn't get re-elected as a deputy. And so we lost momentum. If we in the future are more aware of the fact that we really need to think about all these political processes, and so also it's actually a bit what we heard before today as well, I think with the Beeki project, if we really try to also work on strategically convincing several political parties on this agenda, then I think maybe Limbu would exist today. This is a pilot. It was not a project, I would say. It was with 6 national organizations that had their own federated groups alongside the whole country, where we thought, like, let's set up a mutual credit system for learning among professionals and among volunteers within this social profit sector. They were all enthusiastic. We figured everything out, but we didn't really start with it. So we changed it into, we have put the whole project in the fridge, and now we are waiting until we find a solution for something very significant, I think. That is that we realized at a certain moment that the people involved in the project were not interested in another marketplace. I heard a lot of talks today and yesterday that were mentioning marketplaces as a solution, or like the digital marketplace as a solution. We realized that they were not looking for another thing they had to follow up and so on. So we really need to think about how we can rethink the marketplace, or how we can change the idea of a marketplace, use other channels, communication channels and so on, so that the information people get is very direct and very relevant for their work or for what they want to get out of the system, and that they get rid of all the rubbish and all the what they call rubbish, like information that is just overload of information. I think that is one of the biggest issues to tackle. How can we deal with overload of information so that people keep convinced of the project and are not just overwhelmed? Last one I wanted to introduce to you is Transactie. It started with a provocative idea, influenced by Brad Scott. In Belgium, digital payments are really popular nowadays, and we have our own digital payment application that is now becoming a European payment application called Payconic, but which is owned by the big banks. So we thought, why don't we try to reinvent with some citizens and with some hackers and so on? Why don't we try to reinvent our own Payconic, which is ethical and fair and climate friendly and so on? We managed to convince the National Bank this time that it could be very interesting for them as well. And actually, we went through the project for a first test. We're not convinced by the National Bank's reply that they say that they are not a legal consultant. So while they were saying like, okay, you can do it for now, if you want to really make it big, I think we can get into legal trouble. So that's why we are considering to work with banks in the future. But one thing that is really interesting also for community currencies is that right now the real pain we felt, and we also felt it in other projects, is transaction fees for a lot of local shopkeepers and a lot of local producers. Transaction fees is something they're very allergic to. So if we propose ourselves a transaction fee, they are reacting bad. But on the other hand, it's also a feature we can give to them, or like a selling point we can give to them in order to convince them that paying with, for instance, Zine is cheaper actually for them, or accepting payments with Zine is cheaper for them than accepting MasterCard, Visa, and so on, which is now in Belgium a legal obligation. So although legal tender is still the coins and the banknotes, so people still need to accept that in their shop, but they also need to provide, and I think really it just passed without any political debate, but that's really like a situation where you just promote MasterCard, Visa, and all the big fintech companies to actually penetrate that market aggressively, because all the shopkeepers in Belgium are now forced to at least have one payment provider available within their shop. So what brings the future? I started the talk with situating ourselves as a prefigurative organization, lots of experimenting. We feel after 7 years of experimenting, it's also time to streamline things, to think about bigger formats. And so I think in the near future, we will cooperate even more. And we will also have, I think, a more institutional agenda to convince certain parties, certain municipalities and so on to actively collaborate with us. We do that through campaigning. That's something new. We actually calculated the Happy Planet Index for each municipality in Flanders. So that means that people now can surf, they can go to the website and see how well or how bad their municipality is performing on Happy Planet Index. This is an index that actually looks at how happy are people, how environmentally, what is the climate footprint of your municipality, and how long do people live in your municipality. And I think that's a really interesting trigger, because then we can say, like, you can change this by starting certain things within your municipality. And we're also in the last 7 years, we said we're not a digital player. We always refer to other digital players. We're still not wanting to develop a platform that manages everything. We're now really developing a platform that is only one piece, and that's the matchmaking piece that we can integrate with, for instance, cyclists, but also other community applications around. And we hope by this way we don't reinvent the wheel, and we can actually accelerate and make use of the digital acceleration in a proper way that benefits all the communities that will start with community currency in the future. So that was it.